Typhoon Hinnamnor rebuilding and still a huge threat. Well, after we witnessed the destruction of its eye wall last night, or this morning local time, it looked like the game might have been up for this typhoon, but it has started to come together once again and is actually rebuilding nicely right now, and so the threat certainly remains. It is still a category 1 on the Saffir-Simpson scale and is likely to be bottoming out in intensity and will start to strengthen again shortly as of 10 PM Japan time this September 2nd. Winds of 85 miles per hour and a pressure of 965 millibars, moving northwest at 5 miles per hour. So still a slow movement, but it is starting to get a little bit quicker off the mark. Right now its wind field is still a moderate size and it will continue to grow throughout the next few days. 22.2 degrees north, 124.6 degrees east. There are warnings in effect, gale advisories for most of the Ryukyu islands now of Japan, and strong wind warnings for Taiwan. It is 265 kilometers from Ishigaki, 319 from Miyakojima, 464 from Taipei, 555 from Naha, and 854 from Amami. It will also draw fairly close to places like Shanghai and the western coast of Kyushu with tropical storm force winds before reaching the Korean peninsula. We're still mostly concerned about flash flooding. Of course the winds will be there as well and extreme in some places, but the rainfall is still expected to be quite extraordinary in some places. Miyakojima and the Yaeyama Islands especially could receive in excess of 500 millimeters of further rainfall on top of what we've already seen. In Taiwan we could still see over 250 millimeters of rainfall on the mountains. Here's its forecast over the next few days, and you'll see that the wind field balloons once again into the East China Sea through the weekend, and then off it goes northeastward towards Busan. Just southeast of there is what the forecast is currently saying, but there is room for error, and so everywhere along the Korean peninsula and southwestern Japan should be watching out for this storm. And there it is, turning post-tropical and becoming really large after it approaches the Kamchatka Peninsula. Quite a big spread of estimates on this storm right now. JMA is still as high as 120 miles per hour, Pagasa just short of 100 miles an hour, the JTWC going with 90. Our forecast team have currently gone with 85 miles per hour, and that is probably the lowest wind estimate that we're going to see before the storm re-intensifies. JTWC forecast map there on the left, and here are the current gale advisories for the Japanese territory, and you can see there all of the Ryukyu Islands pretty much, as well as part of the western coast of Kyushu round to the north coast, which is being influenced by a band from the north of the storm. Here it is on the GFS model as we take a look at where it's headed. So it could still become, well, the GFS is still very bold in its prediction of retaking category 3 intensity and then moving off to Korea. It could still be a very powerful typhoon by the time it gets there, probably a category 2 landfall now being forecasted, and then continuing to be swept off towards the northeast. Extremely large wind field, that can't be understated. Shanghai could receive tropical storm force winds, as well as a large chunk of Kyushu and the western tip of Honshu. Here is the water vapor expectations, and you can see with the yellow hues a very wet storm certainly in the making, and its northerly band is expected as well to deliver even extra rain for part of South Korea. So an extremely dangerous storm in terms of that rain expectation, particularly as it moves on through. Next up, we'll be looking at the rainfall expectations, and you can see how it builds quite quickly near the island of Jeju and the southern tip of South Korea. and how the storm plows through Miyakojima and the rainfall it could deliver to that area. We could still see in excess of 20 inches, which is 500 millimeters, and for large parts of the Korean peninsula we're looking at an excess of 12 inches, which is 300 millimeters. Quite a lot of rainfall expected for these areas, as well as northern Taiwan still, as we mentioned, and into parts of Okinawa and the Amami Islands. East coast of China shouldn't get that much rain, but one or two areas near Ningbo could receive maybe 6 inches, 150 millimeters. Sea surface temperatures are still decent where the storm is right now. It's taken a little bite out of the sea surface temperature values, but still pushing 30 degrees Celsius, around 29, and it will still remain rather warm in the East China Sea with temperatures of around 28 to 29. The further west it goes though, the cooler they are, so a westerly track would mean more chance of the storm weakening, or less chance of the storm actually strengthening on those sea surface temperatures, but decent conditions all the way up to the Korean Peninsula. So first of all, let's look at the wide shot imagery, or wider, showing how the storm has managed to come together there on this imagery, and just about its broadness there as well. Convection blowing up along the northeastern quadrant, which is what we weren't seeing earlier this morning, so those islands are going to start to get more wet conditions on the way again as this storm starts to re-intensify. Let's have a look at some more imagery on just how it managed to come back together. You can see here on the RAM imagery how it's managed to curl back inwards. The rotation's always been okay, and now it looks like wind shear is letting up and allowing more convection to blow up with some decent tops there near the central core. So this storm is on its way back quite clearly on this satellite imagery. Geocolor, looking at that, not quite as impressive when you look at this version of the imagery, but you can still see that it's consolidating okay. It's not messed up on the northern side, it's not partially exposed anymore. And let's take a look at the close-up imagery. There it is again, and you can see its proximity to land there from the southern Japanese islands. The storm is now looking like it's moving just a little bit towards the north again. We're estimating 5 miles per hour its current motion. And close up on the water vapor as well, sometimes gives you a better look at its structure. It's not looking too bad certainly compared to last night UTC, this morning Japanese time, and I think this storm is on its way to recovery, which of course is very bad news for the areas that are still ahead of it. Regardless of how much it intensifies, rain forecasts are still very high and is going to be a major threat, along with the storm's winds that are going to be very widespread.